This episode of Midco Sports Magazine is presented by Shields and Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine.
Welcome. This is our 42nd edition of Midco Sports Magazine and our last of 2016. And we are staying strong in this edition. We will hit you with some science and a story on head injuries in football. Not a lecture, but just a great discussion about concussions. And later, warm words of wisdom for the holidays. Try your best, be your best, even though you might not be the best. That's coming up. But we start with a story of a man named Oliver Mousseau, who never really went by his given name, although he certainly made one for himself in a sport that most people don't necessarily associate with Native American culture. Here's David Brown.
This is a story of a man with two identities, but one personality. A man from two families with one bond. A man from two worlds, but with one common goal. It's hard to keep track of all the different paths that have described Oliver Butch Mousseau, but it's easy to glide down the first one. Butch grew up in Boulder, Colorado, the youngest of four in a proud Oglala Sioux family that relocated to the Rocky Mountain State for work and opportunity. And when Butch saw an opportunity, he went to work.
I started teaching him how to skate when he was a young boy, 7, 8 years old. And right away he was a natural. Put the skates on and he just took off.
He liked going fast. And he found out he could go backwards as fast as he could forward. And he really, really liked that. He found what he loved to do.
And he loved being his own man, which started with his own name.
He was just a strong little guy. I'd say, you're just a Butch. You're just so tough, you're so strong.
He was always Butch, and that was how he introduced himself. And I had asked him, why not Oliver? And I never really got a straight story from him.
Butch never, in my eyes, acted like an Oliver. Oliver was always kind of a more serious kind of guy, and Butch always had a smile on his face and wasn't that serious.
But if he was serious about anything, it was hockey. The ability to skate was one thing, but perfecting his on-ice skills was something he would practice day and night, and every time in between.
He'd come and wake me up. Mama, wake up. We got ice this morning. We have ice time.
From 6 a.m. ice times to club tournaments across the country, Butch's parents drove him wherever he could harness his own drive. And while he was working near the University of Colorado, he found someone who shared that passion after seeing her every week for coffee at a local hangout.
Hockey was the very first thing we basically talked about, and he said he played hockey growing up, and I was explaining to him how I had just joined a women's team in Denver, and he just thought that was really cool.
As Butch's love for Macara deepened, so did his love for the game. And he found a new facet that would allow him to keep gliding well past his playing days.
He never even said specifically college or NHL. He just said, I want to be a professional referee. It's such a strange choice when people say that. As a referee, you're picking the one position that generally everybody dislikes you. And Butch is such an unbelievably good guy that really had no enemies in the world whatsoever. Maybe that was his way of trying to get people not to like him.
He realized, I really think that I'm decent at this, and I want to make a run at going as far as I can in this as a career. And so I was like, that's really exciting and awesome, and I support you, and let's do it.
Butch and Macara got married in 1998 and started a family, while also starting a whirlwind journey that brought them from Colorado to Florida to Michigan and back again. All along the way, Butch honed his referee skills across several different leagues.
The kids and I would be like the only ones cheering for the ref.
But his big break came in 2001, when he was selected to officiate a preseason NHL game featuring his hometown Colorado Avalanche.
It was so exciting. I knew how hard he'd worked to get to that point. And I remember walking in there and seeing him come out with the spotlight on him. And I was just overcome with pride.
While it was a pride his family embraced, it was one that Butch wanted to keep to himself. As the first Native American to ever officiate an NHL game, Butch's gear from that contest is in the Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto, a fact no one in his family knew for years.
He said, "Did you know I'm in the Hall of Fame?" I said, "Oh, come on." He said, "No, for real." I said, "Oh my goodness, we're going to have to go one of these days." And he said, "Yeah, we'll have to put that on our bucket list."
He was a very humble person, and he led by example.
That humility kept getting ingrained further and further the more Butch skated toward his ultimate goal. Because while he was chasing a dream to become a full-time referee in the hockey world, he was simultaneously chasing peace and purpose in the Native American world.
It was interesting because it was separate but still kind of intertwined, and he always said that I live in both worlds, and he really kind of did. His spiritual side was very sacred to him. He had recently started sundancing when I met him. He would go back to South Dakota to participate in the Sundance in the summers.
The Sundance is considered the most sacred of ceremonies among the Lakota. Participants dance and pray for 4 days without food or water. Butch's strength and resolve during the Sundance on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation was something he passed on to his 3 children as they grew older.
Identity was very important to us as we were older. It was more than just being at a powwow and putting on your regalia or your costume and going out there.
He never broke his rhythm. He'd stand there and dance, pray with his, looking at the sun and praying and keeping.
It was Butch's enduring belief in the Lakota way that led him to one of the toughest decisions he could ever make. For the sake of his growing family, and with the NHL in labor trouble that would likely delay his ascension toward a full-time position, he cut back his officiating to part-time.
It was a really hard thing to accept for him.
He did a lot of compromising in his life, negotiating what was important to him, and I think he found that strength through sundancing.
While Butch worked a full-time job to support his family, he still got his fill of officiating. Along with participating in camps to help younger referees make their way up, he was still respected enough to officiate on a part-time basis, including the 2008 NCAA Frozen Four in Denver. But in March of 2016, his family and friends got a call that Butch had fallen during the warm-up skate at a game in Michigan.
And I'm like, tripped on the ice. He is by far one of the better, if not the best, skaters across all of NCAA referees.
I got up and I went into the bedroom and the phone rang again, and it was Fran. She said, "Mama, we got to get going. I just talked to the doctor. It's not good. We got to get going."
Butch suffered a head injury and was placed in a coma, as doctors hoped the swelling in his brain would go down.
And I prayed, and I kept saying to myself, yeah, he'll come out of it. I believe that.
Always, I thought, Butch is strong. He'll make it. He'll make it. I really thought he was going to get better, but he didn't.
After 1 week in a coma, Butch Mousseau died on March 25th at the age of 48. Within the hockey world, several NHL players and former referee colleagues attended his service in Boulder. Although Butch was originally a nickname, it was another moniker of Red Eagle or Wanbli Luta that allowed his spirit to soar in front of more than 1,000 people. Back on the reservation, where Butch was buried in a separate ceremony, the melding of his worlds is complete. A hockey referee and a spiritual leader lies here. A man adored by fans and colleagues as well as his wife and children lies here. And a man who loved making his hockey family and his Lakota family proud lies here for all the world to see.
One of the things he told me when we first were together was that he wanted to change the world. He literally said that. You know, over the last few months, I just have reflected back on that comment 20 years ago. I think he did change at least a lot of people's lives and impacted them in a positive way.
All I know is that he was a wonderful person, and he made this world a better place because he was here.
And joined now by David Brown. And like a lot of young officials coming up, you get razzed a lot by the fans. And I would imagine, though, Butch probably got more than his fair share, didn't he?
Yeah, fans are going to disagree with the referees pretty much no matter what, but his family members and his friends admitted he heard some pretty nasty things early on based on his race, based on his heritage. But he had a coping mechanism, a common retort, if you will, that if a fan disagreed with him or said something that was offensive to his Native American heritage, he would just say, "Nice job, pumpkin," or "Good call, pumpkin."
All right, and obviously this has been awful, terrible for his family. How are they doing?
His widow says that his 3 kids are each dealing with it a little bit differently. It's still pretty fresh as of now. It's only been 8 months, but they did have a community hockey tournament in Boulder over the summer, and that raised a lot of money to help for medical expenses. So financially, they're doing okay, but obviously processing his death will still take some time.
All right, thanks, David. When we come back on Midco Sports Magazine, what can science teach us about safety in youth football?
Midco Sports Magazine on Midco Sports Network is presented by Shields and Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine.
Welcome back. Well, 20 or even 10 years ago, it was just called getting your bell rung or seeing stars after a hard hit on the football field. But in recent years, our understanding of concussions and the science of studying them have both come a long ways. Here is Carla Metz.
For some, it's controversial. In the news, it's research versus opinion. It's something we can't physically see, but we know its presence by the side effects. You can almost hear it in a hit. You can feel it through a helmet.
A concussion is a brain injury caused by forces acting on the brain. It can be either a direct blow to the brain or a direct blow to the head, or it can be an indirect blow that causes the brain to move violently around inside the skull. And it causes a variety of symptoms. It can be memory loss, loss of balance, just changes in behavior and mood, and it's really unique to the individual.
Concussions are an ongoing topic of research in sports medicine, but its notoriety has come by its close association with the National Football League. The general public typically only hears about the dangers of concussions, which leaves many fearful about the future of sports and the future of participants. But Dr. Thane Muntz, the Associate Director of the Sanford Science Institute, is trying to tackle some of the questions that will make concussions easier to understand. His research adds a younger twist to the conversation, one in which directly affects parents who have young children interested in putting football pads on for the first time.
We realized that there wasn't a lot of research that had been done with young football players. Most of the research had been done with college and professional athletes. And at that time, nobody really knew if playing football posed a risk to the brains of young football players. And we also wanted to look at the population that could potentially be affected the most. If you look at football participation rates in the United States, nearly 70% of all football players are younger than high school age. Yet it's the age group that we know the least about.
Sanford paired up with the South Dakota Junior Football Program to select their focus group, and since 2011, Dr. Muntz and his staff have zeroed in on one team within the senior division that consists of 7th and 8th graders.
After the first season that was a pilot study, we started to apply impact sensors to our study. So we put impact sensors in the helmets of the players. This sensor system can measure every time the helmet gets hit. It can register the number of impacts, the severity of impacts, and the location of impacts on the helmet. Within that sensor system, we also have a data logger and a transmitter that sends out information to our sideline response system.
So the question is, what do the amount of hits and the severity of hits tell us about young football players? The research team found, looking at middle school players on a hit-by-hit basis, the impact severity on the brain is nearly identical in the middle school population to that of high school football players, which was a surprising find considering the smaller size of middle school players players and the slower speed at which the game is played. They also found the impact frequency, or the number of times they get hit in the head, is significantly less than a high school football player.
Over the course of our study, we've also had 6 subjects who have suffered physician-diagnosed concussions while participating in the study. And we've been able to monitor them throughout the recovery process. And we found that the time it takes for them to be cleared for full return to participation is about 30 days. And that's quite a bit longer than what's typically reported for adult athletes.
Despite the cultural apprehension felt toward concussions, the Sanford team has found great support in both the parents and the coaches. They understand the research isn't about turning participants away from football, but rather to preserve both the sport and the participant.
There's someone from Sanford at all of our practices and all of our games to monitor how things are going. Their role isn't to critique. Their role is to observe and gather facts and gather information on what's going on so that they can tabulate it, they can put their information together, and hopefully it helps youth football, high school football, the helmet developers, the Rydels and Schutz of the world, in how they can make the game safer for the kids so they continue playing.
I think we're just enhancing the game and making it a safer game. There is, like I said before, an attack on the game, whether it's all necessarily true or not. Without this kind of information and that, we don't really know. But anything we can do to make it safer, I'm all for that.
Dr. Muntz knows firsthand the positives of playing football. He played at Augustana until 1997.
There wasn't a lot of thought about concussion when I was playing. Most of the concern was about neck injuries. So when we were told to keep your head up, it was mainly so that you didn't break your neck. But people had concussions, and those weren't considered to be serious injuries. In fact, those were injuries that I remember people laughing about because people would act strange and couldn't remember, what you just asked them. It's in a strange position to be at, to look back as a former player and say, hey, I wonder if that happened to me, and it was just never recognized.
Although the research team at Sanford Institute of Sports Medicine still has many more questions to answer about concussions, the important thing is that the conversation continues and that the information is accessible for future parents and players.
I would advise parents not to be scared of concussions and to recognize that we have a much better understanding now of these injuries and that the sport is probably safer now than it ever has been. You really have to make an individual decision, what's right for your son and for your family, and try and gather as much information as possible.
Joined now by Carla Metz, and fascinating subject for one thing. Have there been any changes in South Dakota junior football based on what Dr. Muntz, his research, and maybe others?
Yeah, maybe not specifically his research, but all the concussion research out there has kind of helped to create what's called the Heads Up Football Program, which has been around for several years. It was started by USA Football, and it's just a program that helps teach and train coaches the proper tackling and blocking technique, and all the coaches in the South Dakota junior football program are certified in that, and they've seen a significant change in safety in the game because of that program.
Okay. Is there such thing as a safe position in football, on the line or the kicker or anybody?
Yeah, that's a good question, and Dr. Muntz and I kind of spoke on that, and here's the breakdown of what he said. He said quarterbacks and wide receivers don't get hit as often, but when they do, it's typically more severe because they're getting tackled at higher speeds. Linemen get hit very often, but it's typically less severe because it's at lower speeds, and then running backs and linebackers are kind of the worst of both worlds because they get hit often and get hit at a higher speed. So if you're looking for a safer position, you could argue that a lineman, maybe the big guys up front, maybe that they're the safest position.
All right, fascinating stuff. Thanks a lot. Carla Metz. Up next, some purpose and perspective for the coming year.
You don't have to be the best at something to do it, whether it's sports or singing or art.
Midco Sports Magazine on Midco Sports Network is presented by Shields and Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine.
Welcome back. We wish you the best in 2017, and as we go out in 2016, some inspirational words that apply to work and sports and anything else that might be a challenge in your life.
Hi, I'm Jason Freeman. I'm originally from Sioux Falls, but now I live in San Diego. this voice that you are hearing is not a California accent, and it's definitely not a Midwestern accent. It's what's called a speech impediment. At least I used to think so. When I was born, I was excited to get into the world. I came a little early, and my umbilical cord got kinked like a garden hose, which makes it hard for me to say umbilical cord. And from that, I developed a condition called cerebral palsy. Early on, my folks started me off so well, and they said, "Jason, you're the best." So as a young kid, I'm little Jason, I'm the best, I'm the best, I'm the best. But around fourth grade, I started looking around and started realizing that I caught a lot more basketballs with my nose and glasses and foreheads than most other boys, and I'm like, why am I different? I decided that I would compensate by being perfect in all other areas of my life. So I wanted to be the perfect student, the perfect friend, the perfect son, and trying to be perfect made me more and more stressed out and more miserable. I worried about everything. And in the spring of 7th grade, I had enough. I found a bottle of pills, smashed the bottle on the floor, and started eating aspirin. Luckily, some deep voice within me said, "Jason, hey kid, I know you're hurting, I know you're confused, but this is not the way." And I called for help. And that call changed everything. I started opening up to the fact that my parents deeply loved me, and I transferred schools, and I started letting kids at my new school in, and I developed so many good friendships, and through those friendships, I was able to see me through my friends' eyes instead of my own super critical eye. And I started to realize that I wasn't my worst fears. I had lots of fun in high school. I ran cross country slowly. And I did the mile in track, and I did that slowly, but I still did it, and it was wonderful. You don't have to be the best at something to do it, whether it's sports or singing or art. I mean, I didn't know my potential either until I started taking risks and really getting out there and doing what I want to do in life. Now I'm a bravery coach and an inspirational speaker. I'm following the career path that seemed least likely 8 years ago. I speak to audiences about the importance of doing imperfect best in life. Yeah, yes, you are the best. My folks were right. There's only one of each one of us in the world. You have a unique opportunity to step off the sidelines and really create all of your gifts to the best of your ability. And the world needs you to do that because you have totally unique gifts. You are amazing.
Thanks for watching. You can find every episode of Midco Sports Magazine on YouTube.
This has been Midco Sports Magazine, presented by Shields and Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine.